Hi everybody, it's me, Curtis, your effective speech instructor. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm down here in my basement. I really need a haircut. Um, I'll be happy when I can get a haircut again. But anyway, I hope you all are safe and healthy. um, you guys should have sent me your first speech. I'm going to, over the next day or two, watch each of your individual speeches, and then I will take some notes, and then I will send you an email with my comments on your speech. Basically, you'll receive an email from me where I'll basically tell you the things that I learned about you, and then I'll give you some feedback on how I think you presented your speech. I will certainly mention things that I noticed that were good, your strengths, and if you had some areas that need improvement, I will, in a very respectful manner, give you constructive feedback. Okay, so think of me as like an athletic coach. If you were playing basketball or something, your coach would tell you what you're doing well, and then your coach would tell you the things that you need to work on, and then not offer, even make you do some sort of drills or something to try and correct any bad habits or to improve your game. So think of me in that way, okay? Okay, so I will get to your first speech and email you within the next few days. Today I wanted to introduce speech 2. I know that our course is so short that, boy, we just have to do one speech, bam, 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 back to back, no breaks in between. But speech 2 is due on May 28th, and the assignment sheet is, there's a copy of it in the assignment section on the Canvas page, and then also in the files section there is a folder entitled Assignment Sheets that has the Speech 2 assignment sheet. So give me a second here. I want to go ahead and go over the assignment sheet with you, okay? So bear with me for a few minutes. So for your second speech, I'd like you to talk about a potential career field that interests you. It could be the career field that you're actually going to pursue, whatever your particular major is. Or even if you wanted to talk about maybe a career that's more like a dream career, like being a professional baseball player or something like that. You can speak on any type of career you want, as long as it's a legal career. I made the mistake several years ago of not mentioning that, and then I had a student give a speech on being a drug dealer, and it was actually a very good speech. But you have to speak on an occupation that's legal, okay? So, as you start to think about your speech, please note that you must, okay, this is not negotiable, you must include the following information, okay? Background information on your academic or career field of choice, why or how you became interested in this particular field, what advantages does your career field have over others, any possible disadvantages, for example, long hours, having to go to school for several years, etc., that type of thing. And then finally, what type of training or education is needed in order to get into your particular career field, okay? So all of the above must be included in your speech. This is a requirement, okay? If you give a speech and let's say you forget to mention the disadvantages of your occupation, you're going to get penalized big time for that. Super, super big time, okay? One of the things that I really want to emphasize to you guys on all your assignments is the necessity to pay attention to my directions. And if you don't understand my directions, that's fine. Just email me or call me and ask a question. But it's imperative that you follow directions, okay? So your job is to convince your audience that your career field of choice is worth their consideration as a potential career path for themselves, okay? Now, I don't know, you all are in different places in your academic journey. I assume most of you have probably taken English composition. Well, obviously when you write a paper, one of the things that you have to have is a thesis statement, and it's usually somewhere in the introduction to your paper. Well, in the same way, when you're giving a speech, I think it's a good idea to have a thesis statement in your introduction where you're going to let the audience know exactly what you're going to be talking about. It's called giving a preview, okay? For example, let's say I was going to give a speech on being a physician's assistant. I might open my introduction with some background information on what a physician's assistant actually is, how it developed. Then I may speak about how or why I became interested in it. And then somewhere towards the end of my introduction, I would have this declarative statement, this thesis statement, where I would say, I believe that being a physician's assistant is a great career field for the following reasons. Bam, bam, bam. Then I'd list them off, let's say like 3 or 4 reasons. And then I might say something along the lines of, in my discussion today, I'm going to talk about why being a physician's assistant is a great career field. And I'm also going to discuss the advantages of this career field, some possible disadvantages, and then I'm also going to discuss the type of training that one has to go through in order to become a physician's assistant. So by laying it out that way, what I've just done is I've let the audience know this is what I'm going to talk to you about today, and this is the order in which I'm going to proceed. And that way it makes it easier for your audience to follow along. The more well organized your speech is, the easier it's going to be for the audience to follow along, okay? All right, so moving on. So the required time for this speech is 5 to 7 minutes, okay? Any speeches more than a minute over 7 minutes will be docked 1 letter grade. Additionally, any speeches more than 30 seconds under 5 minutes time will be docked 1 letter grade. It's vitally important that you stay within the time frame that I give you. So for this speech, you have 5 to 7 minutes to work with. What I would do if I were you is maybe shoot for 6 minutes, and then when you're putting your speech together using the 20-60-20 method, 20% of 6 minutes will be your intro, 60% of 6 minutes will be the main body of your speech, and then approximately 20% of your 6 minutes will be the conclusion. For some students, that's a lot easier. It's an easier way to figure out how you're going to space out your speech. And then within the main body of your speech, the approximately 60%, if you have 3 or 4 things that you're going to talk about, you can break that down accordingly. So when you look at it this way, 5 to 7 minutes might seem like an eternity for some people, but when you break it down like that, because you're going to have the introduction, the conclusion, and then the main body of your speech, and the main body will be broken into 3 or 4 different parts, that really it's doable, okay? It's not as daunting as it might seem. You can use as many note cards or regular 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper as you would like. Sources. You are to use a minimum of 4 outside sources in your speech. In other words, you will need to verbally cite your sources within the body of your speech. What I mean by that is this speech you're going to be using outside sources to help support your assertion or your thesis that being a particular occupation is a good career field. So you're going to look up maybe some background information, on historical background information on the occupation maybe. You're going to look up the education and training requirements. You're going to look up things like the average salary, advantages of this career, disadvantages. And using the internet, actually, you should have no problem finding any sources. One good place to start for this particular assignment is the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. It's BLS.gov. It's a government website that has statistical information on literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different occupations. For example, if I wanted to know how much the average physician's assistant makes. I could find that information on that website. And it breaks it down even further. If I wanted to know how much the average physician's assistant in Pennsylvania makes, as opposed to a physician's assistant in Iowa or somewhere, it has statistical information that's broken down like that. So the BLS.gov website is a really good place to get a lot of hardcore statistical information. Okay. And then again, depending on your particular career field, you might find information on university websites, trade school websites, using the internet. So, for example, if you were going to speak about being a police officer, just Google in their requirements for becoming a police officer, or if you wanted to be a specific workforce, a specific type of police force, like the FBI, or even if it was, say, the Pittsburgh Police, you go to their websites and find out the requirements for signing up and what type of training they go through, etc. And then when you give your speech, you would cite those sources, very similar to the way when you write a paper, you cite your sources. However, when you give a speech, citing your sources is so much easier doing it in a speech as opposed to a paper where you're writing in MLA or APA. When you're giving a speech, for example, you might say something along the lines like this. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, the average pharmacist in Pennsylvania makes X amount of dollars per year. What I've just done is I've given you some information, okay, and then I've also told you from where I obtained that information. So anytime, in the same way that, in the same fashion as when you're writing a paper, anytime you're giving some information in your speech that's not common knowledge, you need to let the audience know from where you obtained that information. And it's really simple. Like I just said, you just do something like, in a New York Times online article, Robert Smith, who is a leading pharmaceutical researcher, says that blah, blah, blah. So I've given the information, I've let the audience know from where I obtained it, I mentioned the person's name, and then I mentioned their qualifications, what makes them a credible source. Also, if you wanted to, you could choose to do a personal interview. For example, say you're going to speak on being a nurse, and you have a friend or a relative that's a nurse. You could use them as a personal interview, whether you sit down and talk to them or exchange emails where you ask questions and then they answer you. If you know someone that works in that actual field, that's great. That counts as a legitimate, credible source, okay? Okay, let me move on here. So speech outline. Every student will submit a typed outline with their recorded submission. I do not have any specific guidelines for how you construct your outline, only that it is typed. Additionally, you must list your sources on your outline. I do not require a formal works cited page. Let me repeat that, okay? I do not require a works cited page or a reference page or whatever. However, I do require that you list your sources somewhere on your outline. Usually what students do, and this is totally acceptable, if you want to just cut and paste your sources at the bottom of your outline, that's fine. This is a requirement for the assignment. Any speech recording submission submitted without a typed outline will not be accepted. Okay? It's very important that you give me an outline. All right? Because what I do is I watch your speech, and then as I'm watching your speech, I'm taking handwritten notes, my observations. And then I look at my notes, and then I also look at the outline, because I want to see, in case I miss anything, I want to make sure that I understand how you organized your speech, okay? So submitting a typed outline is a requirement, okay? And again, there's no special format, however you want to do it. If you decide that you want to speak from a script where you have your entire speech scripted out, if you want to just give me a copy of that, you can. Or if you give me like a more traditional outline with bullet points, or like Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, etc. However you want to do it, it's up to you. Just make sure that you give me a copy of it, okay? Okay, and then recorded speech submissions. After you record your speeches, you can simply send them to me in one of the following ways. Paste a link to the video into the body of an email. A lot of students like to use YouTube. It's very simple. The reason why I post my videos on YouTube is because I'm not really that tech savvy, but I figured out how to post a video on YouTube. So you may want to do it that way. Or you could attach the recording to an email and attach the type outline as part of that email also. Okay? And then please refer to your syllabus for guidelines on recording your speeches, etc. You know, how I want your speeches recorded. You know, example, a good audio, like where I can see your entire body. That way I can assess your posture and things like that, okay? And then the deadlines for submission is Thursday, May 28th at midnight Eastern Standard Time. So please make sure if you have any questions regarding this assignment that you contact me, okay? Now, before I let you go, I'd like you to make sure that you check out in the file section, there's a folder called Speech 2 Related Handouts. In that folder, there are handouts concerning developing an introduction, developing a conclusion. I have another handout called Helpful Hints for Speech 2 Preparation. For those of you that may choose to speak from a script, which is fine, if you prefer to speak that way, there's a handout called How to Make Reading a Speech Not Like Reading a Speech. If you choose to read from a script, obviously you want your speech to sound professional. It doesn't want to be so obvious that you're standing there just reading. You want to seem as comfortable and professional as possible. There's also another handout that addresses the issue of vocal or verbal pauses. I know that when I watch your guys' introduction speeches, there will be quite a few of you, and I include myself in this group, that have issues with these excessive vocal pauses. Basically, a vocal pause is saying, you know, like. I'm going to have to pause the video for a second because I'm in my garage and I can hear that my wife and daughter are coming in. So I will continue the video in just a second. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, my desk is in the basement and it's attached to the garage, so I heard the garage door opening, so my wife and daughter had to sneak on by. But anyway, so I was talking about the Speech 2 related handouts folder. There's another handout. It's a Word document with some links to public speaking tips video links. I really want you guys to watch those videos. They're not very long, but especially watch the videos in regard to what to do with your hands, posture, body language. Those things are vitally important, okay? There's also some other videos that talk about introductions and conclusions. But anyway, those are short videos. They're all like 5 to 7 minutes apiece on average. So please watch those, okay? And then finally, there is a document called Speech 2 Rubric. For your second and third speeches, I will be grading you using a rubric. Basically, since the speeches are worth now, second and third speech are worth 20 points, I've broken it down that you get you get 5 points for the introduction, 5 points for the main body, 5 points for the conclusion, and then 5 points for actual speech delivery, okay? So take a look at that rubric and you will see the guidelines that I have laid out for what I'll be evaluating you on, okay? All right, so this is me today just basically introducing Speech 2. I'll probably drop another video in a day or two, maybe talking specifically more about introductions and conclusions, and then body language and posture. But anyway, so go ahead and get started with your initial research on Speech 2. Figure out what your topic's going to be because we don't have much time. And then I will get my comments from your first speech back to you within the next like 2 or 3 days at most. Okay? All right. Thanks for listening and watching, guys and ladies, and I hope you're all doing well, and I will speak with you again soon. Bye-bye.